weather's picking up significantly. They're already just starting to blast now. This is it, man. This is it.
Captain Jack Bennell lost $1 million payday after a failed drug test turned everything upside down. Canyon Willis, Jack's trusted engineer, refused to comply, plunging the crew into chaos. Now, with the Coast Guard watching, Jack must fight to salvage the operation. Let us see if he can save the haul, or if it's doomed to sink. Alaskan waters, Alaskan woes. Dutch Harbor, where crab dreams and million-dollar deals either soar or sink, sets the scene for Captain Jack Bennell as he wraps up his king crab season on the Pacific Mariner. With 70,000 pounds of crustaceans ready to be offloaded, Jack is poised to cash in on a cool million. But what should have been smooth sailing turns into anything but. Jack and his co-captain, Steve Harley Davidson, find themselves navigating far more than the treacherous Alaskan waters. They are facing a crisis that could upend everything. Beneath Dutch Harbor's waters lies a secret that could wreck Jack's million-dollar plan. Jack and Harley have played their cards right, risking everything on this haul, and now all that remains is to keep the momentum going. Just when they are about to switch gears for the next quota, a phone call brings unwelcome news. A mandatory drug test is required for the crew before they can proceed. This unforeseen hurdle might send their million-dollar payday spiraling into uncertainty. Canyon Willis, Jack's trusted engineer for the past 7 years, becomes the focal point of the unfolding drama. Canyon, like everyone else on the crew, must provide a urine sample to prove he's not under the influence while working in one of the most dangerous professions in the world. Simple enough, except Canyon knows he's in trouble.
My best option is to refuse the test.
The last time he took one of these tests, traces of marijuana lingered in his system for weeks. This time around, he knows that the results won't be any better. With the test looming, Canyon refuses, fully aware that this refusal is tantamount to admitting guilt. For him, taking his chances with getting fired seems better than risking a failed test that would cost him any future chance of holding a maritime license. Jack finds himself caught in a predicament. The rules are clear. The Coast Guard doesn't care about Canyon's work ethic or loyalty. It's black and white. Pass the test or walk away. After much deliberation, Canyon reluctantly agrees to attempt the test. But there's a caveat. It's an observed function, meaning someone has to watch him provide the sample. Canyon's discomfort with this arrangement only adds to the tension. As if things couldn't get worse, when the moment comes, Canyon is unable to perform. He has 3 hours to drink enough water and try again, but confidence in a clean result is low. Meanwhile, Jack has no choice but to keep the Pacific Mariner moving. There are quotas to meet, and a vessel sitting idle is not an option. He hates this part of his job. Firing a friend who's been by his side for years is painful, but with $1 million operation on the line, Jack knows what has to be done.
Reality check, I guess. You have to make decisions for the business and the well-being for the boat and everybody on it.
The Coast Guard's rules are firm, and there's no bending them to accommodate personal loyalties. Canyon's fate is sealed, and Jack must move forward. A replacement is brought on board, a new engineer, fresh-faced and ready to fill the gap Canyon left behind. There's no time for pleasantries. The Pacific Mariner sets off again with the new recruit thrust straight into the deep end as they hurry to make up for lost time and ground. The reality of the fishing industry is harsh, and Jack knows it better than most. Loyalty is secondary to survival out on the Bering Sea. There's no time to mourn the loss of a crew member when every second counts toward meeting the quota. Jack tries not to dwell on Canyon's departure, focusing instead on what lies ahead: the crew's safety, the vessel's future, and the next haul. The new engineer struggles to find his place amidst the experienced crew. The tension on deck is palpable as the greenhorn fumbles through his tasks. The other crew members shoot him sharp glances, their patience fraying as they push through long shifts in freezing conditions. Jack watches from a distance, keeping a close eye on both the new guy and his seasoned hands. There's no room for error out here. One mistake could mean someone going overboard or a life-threatening injury. The relentless conditions continue. The bone-chilling wind cuts through layers of clothing as the crew works the deck in a rhythm born of both skill and necessity. Commands are shouted over the roar of the sea and the mechanical groan of the winch, each pot brought up from the icy depths representing another step closer to their goal. The dangers are ever present, but this is what the men signed up for: the brutal reality of crab fishing. Long hours, exhaustion, and biting cold are the price they pay for the chance at a successful season. Jack finds himself at the helm, staring at the horizon as the endless gray sea meets the sky. His thoughts drift to Canyon, wondering how his old friend is faring now. It's difficult not to feel the pangs of regret, but Jack knows that regret won't keep the boat running or pay the bills. There's no room for sentimentality out here, only determination to move forward and face whatever comes next. Gradually, the new recruit begins to find his rhythm. The awkwardness fades as he learns to move with the practiced precision of the rest of the crew. Jack notices the shift, the kid's growing confidence making him less of a liability. Though the rookie still has a long road ahead, he's no longer a hindrance, and for now, that's enough. As the Pacific Mariner nears its quota, the atmosphere aboard lightens. There's a collective sense of anticipation. Maybe, just maybe, they'll make it without further setbacks. Jack allows himself a rare moment of optimism. The weight of his earlier decisions feels a little lighter, and the vessel seems to glide with renewed purpose as they near their final pots. When the last of the pots are hauled on deck, Jack feels a surge of relief. They made it, despite Canyon's departure. The shaky start with the new crew member and the ever-present dangers of the Bering Sea, they've managed to pull through.
It's Derby season, we're going by Derby rules.
The deck is stacked high with crab, and the crew works with vigor that comes from knowing the end is near. There's still work to be done, but the hardest part is over. Jack surveys his crew as they ready the boat to head back to Dutch Harbor. They're battered, exhausted, but victorious. The payday is theirs, a hard-earned reward for the grueling effort. And though Canyon isn't there to share in the triumph, Jack knows that he made the right choice. The Pacific Mariner must always move forward, no matter the cost. In this line of work, survival is for the strongest, those willing to make the difficult decisions. The boat turns towards Dutch Harbor, the promise of $1 million payout on the horizon. Jack feels a sense of satisfaction, a hard-earned fulfillment that comes from knowing he's done what was needed to keep the crew safe, the vessel afloat, and the dream alive. The Bering Sea may be unrelenting, but Jack Bennell is not one to back down. Not now, not ever. After Jack's hard-earned triumph, Captain Rick faces a day where things must change on deck. Chaos, heartache, and a necessary dismissal. Many years of chaos and heartache, it all led to this. The day Captain Rick finally decided to rip that toxic thorn out of his crew. Some said it was time it was done. Others were just shocked it had taken this long to get rid of the troublemaker. Either way, it was time for a change on deck, a change that had dismissal written all over it. Today was supposed to be the make or break day, the kind where everything revolves around the catch. Captain Rick had his sights set on 45,000 pounds of fish. The crew was out there setting traps and pulling them back, battling the clock, the tides, and each other. And of course, there was Willie, the guy who seemed to specialize in being in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing, at precisely the wrong time.
What's going on?
Oh, he is walking around naked with hanging, so I don't see it.
The deeper they went, the more they caught. It was a frenetic pace, one that only worked when everyone kept their heads up and their hands moving. Eyes on deck, as Rick liked to bark, and by and large, the crew pulled it off. They managed to catch some big fish, even a couple of beauties that made all the efforts worthwhile. But lurking amidst all that noise, tension, and icy saltwater spray was something far uglier: Willie's attitude. Captain Rick had learned over the years that having a disruptive guy like Willie on board was the equivalent of having a ticking time bomb. Willie wasn't just a loose cannon, he was a liability, the guy who points out everyone's mistakes while being blind to his own. And as the day wore on, the guy seemed determined to test everyone's patience. Not just Rick's, he was going for everyone. His particular brand of negativity was like poison, seeping into the air and making the cold weather feel that much harsher. The first signs were small. Careless sarcasm, a bit of snippy talk, the classic refusal to lend a hand while someone else struggled, but it was getting worse by the minute. Captain Rick couldn't ignore the danger. A fishing boat was no place for drama. The sea had already taken care of that enough. The crew didn't need him on board either. Willie's reckless behavior was starting to tell. He was ignoring orders, yelling at Rick, even trying to pick a fight. When the weather got worse, so did Willie. It was no secret that Willie had a special way of attacking Jacob, one of the only black members of the crew. When the insults turned racial, the tension on deck reached a whole new level. There are many things that can be tolerated on a fishing boat, but open racism was not one of them. Not for Rick. Willie had started making comments, low and disparaging, about Jacob, and it wasn't just an isolated occurrence, it was the kind of verbal attack that only someone with a real grudge could muster. And then came the screams, the insults, the demeaning remarks that left everyone, even those who usually look the other way, in stunned silence. The final straw was when Jacob, fed up with the incessant bombardment, retaliated in a way only he could do, leaving Willie shocked and Rick furious. The tension reached its boiling point when Willie's response was to hurl the most offensive insult to Jacob, as if he had to be furious. Rick had heard enough. It wasn't about fishing anymore, it was about having basic human decency. No fish in the ocean was worth keeping someone like Willie on his crew. Captain Rick gathered the crew in the wheelhouse. Everyone knew something was going to happen. It was a small space, but it seemed huge in the silence there. Everyone waited to hear what Rick was going to say. Rick, who normally barked orders and gushed about the catch, was now deathly calm. It was time for Willie to go. It was time to lay down the law. "He's out," Rick declared. He wasn't going to allow a man who treated people like dirt to work under his watch any longer. Rick was tired, not just of Willie, but of how this kind of behavior could rot a crew from within. You have one guy yelling racist slurs, another losing focus, and suddenly no one is watching the traps. No one works as a team, and that's when people, good people, get hurt. Rick confined Willie to his quarters for the rest of the journey. It was a long way back to Dutch Harbor, and the mood on the boat had shifted completely. Willie was out of sight, but the bitterness of everything he'd said lingered in the air. The rest of the guys went about their work, but you could tell there was no joy in it. Fishing's a dangerous enough job when everyone's got each other's back. It's unbearable when trust is shattered. When they reached the harbor, Willie was given his marching orders. Captain Rick didn't waste time on goodbyes. He was done. Done with the drama, the tension, and most of all, the sheer stupidity.
I don't need him on my boat. He is completely done.
Willie had put the whole crew at risk, not just physically, but emotionally too. His departure was met with a mix of relief and anger. No one felt sorry for him, not even for a second. Willie, as expected, left with all the grace of a toddler denied a toy. He ranted and raved, shouted about how he'd find work on a better boat, one that didn't hire idiots. Rick just stood there, letting him blow off steam, waiting for the dock to swallow him whole and be rid of the mess once and for all. Willie could go find another boat, sure, but it wouldn't be this one. Not with Rick. As Willie disappeared into the distance, Rick took a deep breath. It was over. The crew could breathe again. Fishing was never easy. The sea had its own set of rules, its own dangers. But at least now, they wouldn't have to deal with one of their own adding to it. Willie had crossed lines no one should cross, and Captain Rick had done what needed to be done. The crew slowly began to regroup, and the tension eased bit by bit. There were still nets to throw, traps to set, and a quota to hit. The job wasn't going to get any easier just because they threw one rotten apple overboard, but the difference was palpable. It felt like they were finally rowing in the same direction again. There were no more side glances, no more wary looks wondering when the next blow-up would happen. It was back to being about the work, the sea, and surviving another day. The Seabrook crew, still recovering from chaos ashore, heads back to sea with tensions high. Cost of cruise night off. After a long, grueling 2 weeks at sea, the Seabrook crew had one thing on their minds: hitting the shore and blowing off steam. The captains, Greg Willis and Bob Nielsen, decided it was time to reward their hardworking crew for bringing in the last haul, 15,500 pounds, so they gave the guys the night off. They probably shouldn't have. When you tell a bunch of guys who've been busting their backs for weeks on end that they've got one free night, you might as well give them an open invitation to chaos. And chaos is exactly what they brought back to the Seabrook. Late, drunk, and quite frankly, a total mess. No surprises there, really. It was supposed to be simple. Go out, have a few drinks, come back by midnight, and get a good night's sleep so they could hit it again in the morning. But that plan went out the window the second they set foot on dry land. Midnight curfew? please.
Are you going to take responsibility for your actions or not?
The only thing that was going to stop these guys from getting absolutely smashed was a blackout, which, as it turns out, is exactly what happened. By 3 in the morning, Bob and Greg were both standing on the deck wondering where half their crew had disappeared to. Bob was furious. He's not a babysitter, at least he didn't sign up to be. But here he was, chasing after a bunch of guys who thought that getting plastered was more important than being ready to work. And let's not even talk about the fact that someone actually tried to drive after drinking. Basic safety should be common sense, but apparently that memo didn't make it out to the Seabrook. By morning, it was like a scene from a bad movie. Bleary-eyed guys stumbling around looking like they'd been run over by a truck. One guy, Malik, got so hammered he ended up urinating on his bunkmate Nick. Naturally, Nick wasn't too thrilled about that and promptly socked Malik in the mouth. Result? One less tooth and a whole lot of embarrassment. What did Malik think was happening? That his bed had magically transformed into a bathroom? Yikes. The next morning's debrief was just as painful as you'd imagine. Greg made it clear he wasn't happy. And really, can anyone blame him? He's out here trying to keep everyone safe and get the job done, but instead he's dealing with drunken brawls and missing crew members. He's got a ship to run and he needs his crew sober and ready to work, not hungover and acting like a bunch of clueless teenagers. Then there's Sophia, who wants to be a captain one day. Bob had to have a chat with her. She needs to start acting like one if she's ever going to get there. Being a captain means being responsible, not letting the crew run wild every time they hit the shore. It's about making sure everyone gets back in one piece, and last night, she let that slip through her fingers.
If she wants to be a captain, she's got to be more responsible.
If she's going to be the other captain on the boat, she's got to step up. No more excuses. The ripple effects of one night of stupidity were pretty clear. If they're not careful, it could get them all killed. A hungover crew trying to load up and head back out to the Bering Sea? That's a recipe for disaster. One wrong move, one misplaced load, and the Seabrook could roll over. It might start with just a little slip up, but it ends with a catastrophe. That's what Greg is trying to drill into their heads. Every action has a consequence, and out there on the open water, those consequences can be deadly. Sophia seemed to take it to heart. She's got a lot to learn, but maybe this was the wake-up call she needed. Being a leader isn't about being everyone's friend, and it's definitely not about letting things slide just because it's uncomfortable to call people out. She's got to be the one to set the tone, to make sure things get done right. If she doesn't, she's not going to be around for long. That's just the way it is. They'd messed up, and they knew it. Greg wasn't about to let them off easy either. This wasn't just about a night of partying. This was about the safety of the whole crew, about making sure everyone makes it back home at the end of the season. And if that means Greg has to be the bad guy, then so be it.
The end result could be a tsunami when it started with a little pebble in the water.
The Seabrook crew is heading back out, hopefully a little wiser and a lot less hungover. They've got work to do, and Greg's not interested in babysitting a bunch of guys who can't keep it together. It's time to grow up, take responsibility, and remember why they're out there in the first place. There's a job to be done, and there's no room for screw-ups, not when lives are on the line. Greg knows that every slip-up out here could have severe consequences. When you're out on the Bering Sea, a careless mistake isn't just a bad day. It could mean the difference between making it home or not. A load that shifts, a tired mistake, or just one hungover crew member could spell disaster for everyone on board. It's harsh, but it's reality. And if the crew can't handle it, well, they might just find themselves off the Seabrook for good. For Sophia, this was her chance to rise to the challenge. She'd asked for responsibility, and now it was time to prove she was ready for it. No more hiding behind her age or her lack of experience. Leadership is about taking control even when it's tough, about making decisions that might not make you popular but keep everyone safe. She's got to embody that if she wants to captain someday. As the sun rose over the docks, the Seabrook was slowly coming back to life. The crew, a bit worse for wear, started getting back into the routine. It wasn't going to be an easy trip back out, but maybe, just maybe, they'd learned something from the mess they'd made. Greg was ready to give them another shot, but he wasn't going to put up with another night like the last one. They've got fish to catch, a season to complete, and no time for anyone who isn't 100% committed to getting the job done right. Should Sophia be given another chance after her mistakes, or is leadership too risky for her? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, like the video, and don't forget to subscribe.